Thank you very much, Francois, for the introduction. My name is Dimal, and I'm joined by Robert Rhodes. So, Robert, let's maybe kick off straight into today's discussion. Why Guernsey? I mean, there's so many different platforms out there based in different jurisdictions. Why would an advisor and a client want to choose a platform that's based in Guernsey?
We set up the MWI platform in Guernsey more than 20 years ago. And the MWI platform powers our investment and insurance products, which are designed to meet the needs of both South African and expat investors. Now, obviously, there's a number of jurisdictions across the globe that do global platforms, from Bermuda to the Isle of Man to Jersey, and of course, Guernsey, to name but a few. We find Guernsey a good place to do business. It's geographically convenient, situated in the middle of the English Channel. It's just a short flight from London. It's in the same time zone as South Africa, and it's English speaking. It's a very stable and secure environment with a very well-established financial services sector, from investment management to banking to insurance. And of course, in that sector, there are world-class financial services providers, administrators, custodians, and the peripheral support services like lawyers. It's also very strong from a regulatory perspective. The regulator is flexible, pragmatic, and very, very responsive. And protection of investors is very high up on the regulatory agenda. As a member of the international financial community, Guernsey takes its obligations in the fight against money laundering and terrorist financing very, very seriously. In 2016, which was the last time the Financial Action Task Force evaluated Guernsey from an AML and terrorist financing perspective, we were compliant or largely compliant with 48 out of 49 of their recommendations. And our next visit is next year. So we're looking forward to seeing how that turns out. Guernsey is also known for being innovative. We pioneered the protected cell company for captive insurance way back in 1997. And today, Guernsey is the largest domicile for captive insurance in Europe, having recently overtaken Luxembourg. We were also a pioneer in electronic transactions with the introduction of electronic transaction legislation in 2000, which was updated again in 2019. And that provides certainty of legal effect, viability, and enforceability of contracts that are executed electronically. So in short then, Dimal, Guernsey is conveniently located. It has a strong financial services industry with world-class service providers, a very strong regulator, it's stable, and it's known for being innovative.
Robert, thank you very much for that. I think it's quite interesting and apt at the moment, with the different things that's happening around the globe at the moment. Even a few years ago with the Panama Papers, for example, that clients and advisors need to think about jurisdictions very, very strictly. Maybe you can share with us, where do we actually get support from for MWI?
So MWI being part of the group in South Africa, most of our support comes from South Africa, but we also get support from financial advisors in regions which are considered to have a high number of expat clients, such as Hong Kong, Malaysia, Middle East, and also some parts of Africa like Mauritius. Our solutions are tailored for South African clients looking for offshore investment and insurance products, as well as international financial advisors and their clients.
Robert, it's again interesting to hear where the support actually comes from, which is quite global, in fact. And I think the interesting question that we maybe just want to ask and understand better is, what sort of checks and balances does Momentum actually do when picking up on these advisors and going through some sort of accreditation process?
Yeah, it's very, very important that we partner with the financial advisors. And I think bottom line is that we would look for a financial advisor to be licensed and regulated in the jurisdiction from which they operate. So naturally, if the South African advisor is, naturally, if the financial advisor is in South Africa, we would look to that financial advisor to be licensed and regulated by the Financial Sector Conduct Authority. Similarly, if they're in the UK, the Financial Conduct Authority there, or for example, in Hong Kong, the Securities and Futures Commission or the Insurance Authority. Dimal, those were great questions. You work with our expat supporters, and maybe you could share some of the potential complexities that you've come across in those advisors providing cross-border advice.
Yeah, so Robert, I mean, in terms of the environment that I operate in, as you know, we're dealing with advisors in multiple jurisdictions. And I think the interesting part of that conversation is if we take it a step further, not just the advisors operating out of multiple regions, we have their clients that might be living in different regions. So by way of an example, you may have an advisor that's operating out of one country, giving advice through that particular business and that particular license to clients that may be living in multiple jurisdictions. So I think the first question that comes into play, or maybe the first complication rather that comes into play is, does my advisory license allow me to give advice in multiple jurisdictions? So should I be licensed here as well as in the country where my client is based in? Or even potentially, should I be licensed and accredited for a product which my client is looking to invest in another country? So it can get very complex and complicated quite quickly. Maybe by way of example, we deal with expert clients or expert advisors rather in Far East, where they tend to have clients in the UK, in Malaysia, or even for that matter in Hong Kong. Now, in each of those regions, they may deal with clients that want to use a product in country for retirement savings, for example. So similar to South Africa, a South African advisor needs to be licensed appropriately. They may need to have an FSCA license and be phase accredited before giving advice on a retirement fund in South Africa. Similarly, there's rules and regulations in place for those particular advisors if they're giving advice in country on a particular product set. So advisors need to think about this quite seriously. I think in summary, what this means is that you need to think about where is your client based, where are they going to be based, what sort of product are they going to use? And then I think further than that, the advisor needs to decide, okay, can I give advice through my existing license, or do I need to be licensed differently in that particular country? And if that's the case, I think the last sort of question that comes to mind is, how do I give that advice? If I need to be licensed here, how do I give that advice? Do I need to set up a new business? Do I need to apply for a particular license? Do you need to be regulated in multiple jurisdictions? Or potentially, can I partner with an existing advisory business already that's doing business there and go on as an advisor on their rep register, for example? So again, there are solutions to this. One needs to just apply their mind and understand what their clients are looking to do.
Yeah, so definitely a case of applying their mind. Lots and lots of considerations. Dimal, how do you think MWI can assist advisors to navigate these complexities?
We don't really assist with licensing. And I think that's where the challenge comes in for most advisors, is to understand the in-country rules and regulations of each different jurisdiction. So you can imagine that's quite complex and it can get quite difficult for an advisor to unpack these. But that's why we're here today, to actually understand, what does this mean for you and your client? It's not as simple as saying, okay, my client's immigrating and I'm going to continue giving advice. What are the implications to you as the advisor? So maybe what we could assist with in terms of MWI is we have a range of solutions that cater for South African clients, and then we have a range of solutions that cater for non-South African clients. So I don't give advice, or I'm not licensed to give advice in South Africa. And this is just an example that we can maybe go through. So picture this, a South African individual that's looking to emigrate. They currently invested into an endowment product that caters for their needs in terms of long-term savings, succession planning, tax planning, and so on. So the product works, it's great, it's while the client is South Africa, everything's fine. The minute the client decides to immigrate, that's when the challenge comes in. So now that the client moves to, for example, the Far East, or the Middle East for that matter, that endowment may not be the right solution. Again, for various reasons, succession planning, tax planning, whatever that may be. I think we're going to cover some of those topics in the next few sessions anyways. But you as the advisor then need to check, okay, great, this is not the right particular solution for my client, the endowment. But I may be able to use a discretionary solution that doesn't have any tax planning in it. My client in that particular instance needs to report tax to whichever tax authority they're reporting to, or wherever they tax resident for that matter. And in that instance, the client then continues to invest in a global portfolio and reports their tax wherever they need to be. So it's become slightly uncomplicated. I think for advisors specifically, maybe just looking at the last 2 points that we've discussed, advisors need to think about their existing book. They need to think about the evolution of the book. With so many South Africans thinking about the Plan B, or have started planning the Plan B, or have done it many years ago, may even be in implementation phase of going into the Plan B. So they're activating the Plan B and emigrating. So the thoughts that need to go through an advisor's process is, okay, so what do I need to do, which is what today's discussion is very much about, and then who can I partner with and assist me with these processes and understanding these complexities. So I think that's where it needs to be in terms of today's discussion. So, Robert, I think we've covered quite a bit of ground on the individual side and how it impacts the advisor in terms of giving advice in multiple jurisdictions. Maybe we should touch on a topic and a discussion point that we generally don't really go to. And I think it's important to have a discussion. So we're seeing quite a bit of growth in terms of advisors and their offshore book. And what generally happens is they may look for solutions that cater for their actual practice and their clients in terms of having a range of funds or a particular fund that caters for their clients specifically. In this case, we offer a range of Momentum Wealth International or a range of white label solutions. Could you please elaborate on that and how we assist South African advisors?
Thanks, Dimal. That's a great question. We've seen a phenomenal rise in the popularity of discretionary investment managers or discretionary fund managers, not only in South Africa, but across the markets that we operate in. And we see this as a natural evolution in the platform landscape, enabling a client and an advisor to appoint a DFM to run a model portfolio according to a bespoke mandate and have any number of clients invested in that model portfolio. MWI has been at the forefront of this trend, and for many years, model portfolios have been a core part of our proposition. From an advisor's perspective, there are, of course, great advantages to appointing a DFM to run a model portfolio mandate for the advisor's clients. The advisor is free then to focus on holistic financial planning activities and spending more time on generating or creating a strong relationship with clients and, of course, finding new clients. However, from an investment management perspective, running investment strategies through a platform can be cumbersome, especially if that DFM needs to run the same models on a number of different platforms. The integration between the DFM portfolio management system and the platform is often very clunky and manual, and for that read slow and error prone. But we definitely accept that there is a place for model portfolios, and this will remain a key part of MWI's proposition. But apart from these process inefficiencies, there are some important disadvantages to model portfolios. And we see the main disadvantage being that the investor in the model portfolio, every time the portfolio manager or DFM rebalances their model portfolio, that investor is potentially subject to a tax event. To solve this, we have seen advisors convert their model portfolios into unitized fund solutions. And to facilitate this trend, we set up in the early 2000s, the Momentum Mutual Fund ICC in Guernsey, which is an umbrella structure which enables a financial advisor to easily set up a bespoke fund for their clients. If the financial advisor has the right license, of course, the financial advisor can manage the assets in their portfolio, or they can appoint a third-party investment manager to manage their assets. Of course, it is more expensive to run a portfolio in a fund rather than a model portfolio format. But we believe that there are important sleep well at night benefits from knowing that your client is invested in a regulated fund that's managed according to your mandate, that's overseen by a professional board of directors and is subject to an annual audit. But from an investment management perspective, it is also far more efficient. And the types of assets that can be included in a fund are often far broader than the type of assets that can be included in a model portfolio on a platform. And of course, there are important tax advantages. Every time that the discretionary fund manager places a trade in that fund, the underlying investor is not subject to any tax event. That tax event only happens potentially when the client exits the fund. So I guess the bottom line is that MWI really does offer a one-stop shop. Not only do we operate a platform with investment and insurance products for South African clients and financial advisors, but also expat clients and financial advisors. But we can also accommodate bespoke funds through our own Guernsey fund structure.
Thanks for that, Robert. I think you summed it up quite well. And that almost brings our session to a close today. Thank you very much for joining us in today's session. And I hope you found this interesting and insightful. Most of all, we hope that this sort of thinking comes into your business plans in terms of future planning and exactly in terms of how your book starts to evolve over time with your clients potentially looking at moving abroad.